I call this meeting of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us on yet another hot summer day. Let's jump right into our reports. We didn't have anybody sign up to speak. Is that correct? No. Carl? Okay. Then we will move straight into our financial report. Mr. Welch.
Good evening, trustees. We have a couple items on the financial update tonight. First thing, we'll take a quick look at a proposal for bond issuance from Mr. Josh McLaughlin would be okay. And then we also will take a quick look at our preliminary budget for the 2022-2023 school year. And then we also have a model of our 5-year financial projection that we will share and cover a few details with. So to start off, let me bring Mr. McLaughlin up and just remind you that as we progress through the budget timeline, the board has taken action on some pretty major items at this point already with the compensation plan, the staffing plans. We've looked at our estimated property values. We just got our certified property values, which will update some of the information that you received in your board book. We have an updated presentation for you at your place tonight, both in regards to the budget and the bond issuance. And then we'll be looking for putting the notices in place and everything for our August 22nd public hearing for the budget and the ability to adopt the tax rate and budget at that time. So without further ado, let me bring Mr. Laughlin up. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. It's a pleasure to see you again. I'm going to run through this relatively quickly from what was in your board book versus what's been updated for tonight. I'm going to cut to the chase. Your certified values came in much better than we anticipated. So the number I'm going to show you tonight is much higher than I told you a month ago. With that, again, talking about how the district has managed its portfolio through refundings, incorporating variable rate debt, prepaying debt, the district has saved roughly $133 million of future interest costs for taxpayers. When we look at your tax rate, again, over the last 3 years, your total tax rate has gone down by 8.25 cents. And you're anticipated to go down another 2.29 cents again this year based upon tax compression, which Mr. Welch will get into later. We would anticipate you would maintain that INS tax rate for the debt service on your bonds of roughly 50 cents. In terms of your bonds issued, you still have $198.93 million of bonds remaining from the 2017 bond program. You'll see the 3 sales that we've done there right in the middle. Interest rates ranging from the low of 218 to the high of 389. So historically, you've received very good interest rates on your bonds from this particular bond program. This gives you a look at your debt currently outstanding as of July 15th, roughly $919 million of bonds. You're currently rated Aa2 by Moody's and AA- by both Fitch and S&P. So excellent credit ratings, but as a reminder, every time we go sell bonds, you get the permissible fund guarantee, you get that automatic AAA rating. In terms of the $919 million, $752 million is callable prior to final maturity. You'll see the various interest rates, but currently, as I told you last time, there is no opportunity to refinance your debt at a savings at this point. That is something we continue to monitor, and hopefully in the future we'll bring something to you. Regarding interest rates, This is the bond buyer index. It gives you a general indication of what municipal interest rates are doing. Since we hit the high a couple weeks ago, interest rates have come back down a little bit. Now the concern is we will potentially go into the other R word, the recession. So investors are starting to see a little bit of a decline in interest rates. So we're going to look at two different scenarios tonight. The first scenario, the first option is to sell bonds from your remaining 2017 bond program, assuming no future growth beyond what you received this current year. And again, you received your certified values end of last week, so we have now taken that into account. The other option would be to sell all remaining $198 million. Okay, so we're going to show you both options for your consideration. So in terms of assumptions, again, these bonds, since you're at 50 cents, would be sold for no tax rate increase. We've assumed current market rates as of last Friday plus 25 basis points. Again, we're going to add a little conservatism because it's probably 3 or 4 weeks away before we can actually sell the bonds. These would be structured over a 30-year period. Historically, that is how the district sells its bonds. In terms of other available revenues, after the meeting last time, Mr. Welch and I had the opportunity to visit, share different calculations, my calculation for his, and we ultimately came to the conclusion that we're going to use his calculation. So these numbers reflect the numbers he's using for budgetary purposes. The biggest change from the assumptions last time, and what had the biggest impact, is the tax collection rate. Historically, we've used 98%. Mr. Welch used 99.5%, which mirrors the actual collection rate. So we have taken that conservatism out of our numbers and applied it to this particular analysis. In terms of values, your value for your tax value for next year has grown to roughly $13.2 billion. It represents just under a 16% increase. Your values grew over 1.8 billion, which is the largest they've ever grown. So if we look at the last decade, the current year is the largest increase. Over the last 10 years, you've grown on average of $750 million per year, which is roughly 8.78% year-over-year growth. If we look at the last 5 years, you've grown at even a faster clip, roughly 1.1 billion, which is over 11.5%. So again, for the purposes of the options, option one, assuming no additional growth, you'll see that there. But in option two, in order to sell all remaining 198 million, the district would only have to grow one additional year of about 400 million. Why is that important? Well, when you received your July estimates, there was 640 million essentially in the 10% residential homestead cap. So again, what the 10% residential homestead cap is, taxable values on residential homesteads cannot go higher than 10% in a given calendar year. So assuming no growth going forward, you would have at least that value coming back onto your rolls in subsequent years. So by only assuming $400 million of growth, when you have 640 million in the residential homestead cap, you should know that your values, assuming we hit a recession and you have stagnant growth, you will get at least that growth over the next couple of years. And so we would deem option two of selling the remaining bonds viable. So if we look at the
risk there is that there's a market correction and that values actually decrease.
Unless there's a market correction where values actually go down or home prices actually start to reverse course. Yes, ma'am. So in terms of option one, based upon current values, you could roughly sell 156.11 million. That is almost double what I showed you last month. Again, the values went up substantially higher than what we had projected. The interest rate on those bonds would be roughly 4.2%. There would be no increase in your overall tax rate. The net bond payments associated with the $156 million bond sale would be roughly $276 million. In the first 5 years, you're paying off roughly $14 million. Again, we don't want to sell bonds where you're financing a computer over a 30-year period. We want short-term assets to be paid off their useful life. So you can see the repayment in 10 years is 32 million, and 15 years, 54 million. Again, these bonds would be repaid completely over a 30-year period. We look at option 2, selling the remaining 198 million. The interest rate would be slightly higher, 423, net bond payments of 360 million. But again, you would be able to accomplish this all in the next few years. The numbers that support that are on the next couple of pages. I'm actually going to focus on page 15, which is the remaining 198 million. If you look at the second to last column, that shows your projected tax rate, which would remain at 50 cents until 2033-34, in which case you see a decline in your bond payments, which would result in a decline in your overall tax rate. Again, that assumes no future growth beyond next year, as well as no future bond programs. The district is in an excellent position that should its values grow in the future, it will have additional bond capacity for additional facilities that it will need. So with that, later tonight on the agenda, there is a request to adopt a parameters order. This is something the district has historically done in the past. The parameter order would allow the administration to move forward with the sale of the bonds subject to these parameters. The first parameters, we could sell no more than your remaining authorization of 198.93 million. The maximum interest rate cannot exceed 5%. The final maturity cannot exceed 30 years. And we would all have to get this done in the next 180 days. The reality is we're trying to move much quicker. We have already received the permanent school fund guarantee in hand. We will be applying to the rating agencies tomorrow. So hopefully, based upon this particular timetable, we will have everything wrapped up by August 12th so that we can be in a position to sell the following week and get the district its funds based upon this plan by August 31st. I know I went through that relatively quickly. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Well, the question would be, it's good to go ahead and get the money. It's just, we'd be paying interest on whatever we wouldn't be immediately needing to pay construction costs. So Rob, you have kind of a timeline of when we would be expending these bond funds. We got the new high school, the elementary school, and I know we have projects, but will the cash flow work where we would benefit from going ahead and selling all the bonds?
As we look at the difference between option 1 and option 2, we're only talking about a $30 or so million difference, $30 to $40 million difference. So the value of doing that one cost of issuance would be a savings to the district, as well as locking in the interest rate and with not knowing what will happen in future years. So as far as funding, yes, we would end up expending those funds within a 3 to 4 year window, and that would extinguish the funds, and we wouldn't run into any arbitrage issues or anything.
Is there any advantage to having the money there to pay things early? Are there any discounts that the construction or anything they offer us?
Not necessarily, but having the funds available allows us to move faster as if there are contracts or items that we need to get in place. We don't have to wait on the funding process and a potential additional cost down the line of having additional issuance.
Thank you.
Question is probably more for Pete and maybe in the timing of when the projects would come in. If we have a future bond that is successful, do we have any overlap issues as far as the timing of when, like, a project like Wayside would be brought online versus when some of these would be ending up if we didn't have the capacity to issue the new bond?
Well, in our last bond proposal, we had it overlaid where we would finish the 2017 bond and then we'd start the next bond. So there was really very little overlap.
There wasn't, okay.
As long as we can get our HVAC things, within a reasonable time, because, we have to get it on the streets. We can put it in next summer. So, but our plan was to move all those forward and save in the inflation, kind of what we've been trying to do. So that would help us do that.
I would say the main factor, and Josh, you kind of touched on this, is really interest rates. Is we have the factor of it's interest rates in construction, but just saying on the interest rate side of it, we don't really expect it to get significantly better. If not, it's going to get much worse. And so you capitalize on those savings versus, of course, you get some interest bearing of those dollars being in our account, not enough to offset all of the interest expenses, but certainly enough to make up the difference in terms of the interest rate, potential interest rate increases. So you mind touching on that, Josh?
No, that's exactly right, Dr. Chadwell. So when you're thinking about it, you do have a short-term cost where you're financing something and not expending the proceeds right away, but that is generally a 1 to 2 year problem versus when you're selling the bonds, you're selling 30-year debt obligations. And a 0.25% change on those obligations will equal as substantially more than the interest float, if you will, that you have to pay initially. The other good thing in the district's favor is the Federal Reserve is going to meet this week. Presumably, they're going to increase interest rates another 75 basis points, which means the short-term interest that you're going to earn on the idle proceeds will go higher over the next year as well. As the Federal Reserve keeps increasing that Fed funds rate, that corresponds with your short-term interest rates, which means you'll have more investment income.
What's tied in the text pool, the things we're investing in.
So text pool tends to, by and large, are buying government securities, whether it's agencies, treasuries, or whatnot, but they're buying short-term durations over the next, 50, 60 days, or when these, investments are starting to mature. So as they're starting to mature, rates are on the rise because the Federal Reserve is pumping up those rates. They get to invest in higher yielding securities, which means they transfer that to the districts because you're now earning more on those investments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, review the budget.
We have, again, looked at the bond issuance plan and a quick review of the budget. And as we talked about in past budget years, same thing with this year. Key factors on revenue, we're looking at property values, what that does with state aid. Obviously, the key drivers, enrollment and average daily attendance. And then we also have federal funding and the ESSER funding, how that impacts the overall budgeting plan. So on the expenditure side, we've worked to accommodate growth. We have continued to bridge the gap for learners. We've had a real focus on employee raises and retention this year, and the board's action with the 3% compensation plan earlier in the year, making that commitment early. And then we have expansion of our full day pre-K. We also have to consider maintaining our technology requirements as we increased our technology devices. And during COVID, those devices do have a recurring, there's a recurring cost in keeping those replacement cycles in place. And then operational needs, we're continuing to see increases in various areas, including the property insurance. And we'll continue to monitor that and have take that into consideration. On the property value side, just a couple of things we did, as Mr. McLaughlin mentioned, we did just get our certified values. They came in at the 15 to 16% level and as far as increases. And we utilize those numbers to go in, and TEA has at the maximum compressed rate calculation that determines the base portion of our M&O tax rate. That sets the base, and that's a little over 80 cents is the floor. We've gone as low as we can there. We have to tax at that level in order to maximize our state funding. And then we have on top of that, the 13 pennies that voters approved as part of the tax ratification election some years ago. And then, so that brings us together that 93.46 cents or 0.9346 cents for a M&O tax rate. That's a decrease from our current rate of 2.29 cents. Then again, on the interest and sinking side, as Mr. McLaughlin showed in the model, we would recommend a 50-cent tax rate to support the bond issuance and repayment schedules. So then our total tax rate would decrease that 2.29 cents from $1.4575 to $1.4346. So, and then just a reminder that the state funding formula makes up the difference for that M&O tax rate decrease. What we lose in the way of property tax collections, the state makes up that difference. And it is all based going back to our average daily attendance is what the main driver is in the funding formula.
So when the property values went up, it's still the calculation for the maximum compressed rate remained the same number?
Yes,
So
it
we would
did.
be collecting more. Does that mean we get less from the state?
Because that was outside of any ADA growth, that would be the case. But with our ADA growth, our overall funding level increases to match our new enrollment or average daily attendance, I should say. And so the difference when our property values go up, the state adjusts our level, adjust our tax rate down to a certain level that will generate a certain level of local revenue. And then they will make up the difference in the state funding.
There's really not any local control of the M&O rate. So basically we have a state income tax, basically.
We have very little control over the rate now.
This is the hidden recapture we talk about. So if we go back up by 15%, we're not going to see 15% more on the M&O side. We're going to see something less than that because the driver, of course, has to do with ADA or based on enrollment, of course.
Yes.
And this is something that Mr. Newcomb's talking about. Just we want to make sure to say publicly is that we are not in control because the most logical thing would be we'll just reduce the tax rate even lower. But what people don't realize is you lose state aid. So you end up having the state is really driving our M&O rate versus it being driven locally.
Yes, if we don't tax at least at that maximum compressed rate plus the 13 cents that we have as voter approved, which actually provides some additional level of equalized state funding for those 13 pennies, then our state funding goes down.
So a taxpayer logically would think I'm paying X percent more because my property values have gone up. I'm assuming all those dollars are going to go back to my local school district when it's much, much less than that. We'll actually go back to the local district, even though it's stated that way, of course, on our bills and from TAD and so forth. And so when they give us relief and give us state relief and compress the tax rate and go up to the $40,000 property, that's actually off of our money that they're just reappropriating to us and making it seem like they're taking other parts of state revenue to give us that money when actually they're just giving us some of our money back. So there you go.
I said it's a state income tax.
Yes, sir. That was the more elevator speech way to say that.
Well, and then to add to that is the realization that the basic allotment isn't going up. So it's not, we're not getting a larger amount per student either. And so it's basically revenue level goes up and the state's basically telling us how they're going to break up between local and in state funding.
So what we're encouraging legislators and state officials going into this next year, and this has been brought up to us, we were, through your leadership, able to get 3%, but we know that the individual employee, their inflation's gone up more than 3%. And so we can only go up as much as the basic allotment, which is the amount of dollars per child is. Therefore, all these additional dollars that are made possible through increased property values should go back, of course, to compression and help property taxpayers, but also should help us in order to keep up with inflation with our employees, insurance costs, et cetera. And so those are things that we're actually in our legislative priorities. We're speaking to legislators already about that and planning for this next year. And also compounded with that is Comptroller Hager came out with even a larger surplus at the state level that's already been kind of targeted towards certain needs. One of those are teacher pay, which would be great, be awesome for that. We would prefer that with no strings, because remember, they put a lot of strings on that the last time. In our case, it really didn't have a negligible effect, but it wasn't like that there was a lot of flexibility either. So.
Yes, indeed. So again, one of the pieces that we look at would be enrollment. And next year we are projected with the, thanks to Zonda's work here, is 23,549 students. From a funding standpoint, we get funded based off of average daily attendance. So we have to adjust that number to what we believe will happen in the way of attendance. We have seen with COVID, we've seen our annual attendance rate drop on average. And so that's something that we're looking to concentrate on and hopefully see that number increase, or that rate increase. But we are right now, guys, projected at an average daily attendance of a little over 22,000 students. And that's reflecting about a 93% rate. So we're hoping that that we are able to come in above that, but I felt like that was a necessary adjustment going into this budget.
Did you use 90 what?
93.
93. Okay.
93%. Then the other piece that adds to the budgeting plan is how do we work with our ESSER funding? And we do have a public meeting tonight that we review the plan, as we will do so every 6 months as part of the requirements for the ESSER funding. But just quickly, looking at ESSER 2 was supplanted. Our ESSER 2 supplanted some of the state funding. And we only netted about $2 million out of the ESSER 2 funding. So, and then all of ESSER 1, just a reminder that all of ESSER 1 back in 2019-20 was entirely supplanting our state funding. So there's some adjustments there from the standpoint of ESSER. When you may see that we receive so much money in ESSER, just know that some of those funds are not, we're supplanted, and we're not actually, we didn't actually get the benefit of those funds as additional dollars.
Mr. Welch, one other factor just to point out is that on the other funding is that district's ESSER funding wasn't proportional only to the number of students. It was also the number of economically disadvantaged students they had in their district, meaning that you're in a district with very few economically disadvantaged students. Your portion of ESSER would be very low, whereas if you were in a very large district like Fort Worth or Dallas, in some cases, the amount of their ESSER funding actually surpassed or came very close to their annual budget. So their ability to use those ESSER funds, for example, incentive pay and other factors, were allowed. So this is not an equal kind of funding per districts per student. There was already a built-in perception that dollars should be allocated based upon the identification of kids as economically disadvantaged or not. In addition, ESSER 2, he mentioned the supplanting. That wasn't a requirement of that. That was actually a choice by Texas to supplant. It was written into the law for ESSER 3 that they couldn't. Otherwise, that would have happened probably again. So those dollars were collected at the state level, and then those dollars had gone out, and they could go out through non-education for ESSER. So for example, county dollars for ESSER or state dollars for ESSER, so forth. And so there's been a lot of movement in those funds. And so we're pleased that we have them, but frankly, if we had received more, it would have been obviously much more helpful to work through what we're working through right now.
And so total, just, recapping, ESSER 3 was a little over 13.2 million. That was supplemental funding. And then ESSER supplement was, actually went up, since I think we last talked, went from 4.4 to 4.7 million. There are allowable uses for the funds, student learning loss, safe reopening of the district, retaining employees, operational needs, teacher support. We've taken those into consideration within the budget. And then, they don't last forever. They're only out there until 2023, and with a one-year carryover into the 2024 year. So just a recap of the 2022-2023 preliminary budget to this point, as I mentioned before, the model does include the compensation plan with a 3% raise for all employees. It includes the approved staffing plans. It does recommend that the M&O and INS tax rate, total tax rate decrease by 2.29 cents. And then it does have the strategic use of ESSER funding within the budget plan, and I'll walk through that in a moment. And then we're having to be very careful in our consideration of our enhancement request as we look at our long-term budgeting priorities. So the preliminary budget, as you see here, is we have our total expenditures of 231 million, or a little over 231 million, and total revenues of 225 million. The gap in there is being covered by what we're going to do is, as we've been working through the ESSER requirements, and those requirements evolve. And we've recently made some adjustments to our plan for the use of our ESSER funds over the next 3 to 4 years, based on some of the monitoring and reporting requirements and some of the things that we are learning as ESSER continues to evolve in the expectations and requirements. And so what we're going to do is we're going to move up our plan to recover some pre-award cost that we had planned later in our couple of years down the line when we felt like the need was a little bit higher. We need to go ahead and move that up, and we're going to be requesting those pre-award costs. So what's going to happen is those monies are going to come in and be revenues to the general fund, Fund 199, in the 2021-22 school year. They will not be utilized. They will end up rolling into fund balance, and then we'll have to come back as part of next year's budget. We'll have to amend those monies back out of fund balance to cover the 2022-2023 budget expenditures, which is part of the plan, but it's the process and the timing that's want to be very clear on what we will see. We'll see the fund balance go up, and then at the end of this year, and then we'll pull that money back out and utilize it for next year. And so you can see here the total revenue were when we take all sources next year, we'll have a balanced budget from that standpoint.
And our 22 million is held by TEA, right? The federal government pays TEA.
Yes, sir.
And they hold that money, and then we request the money from TEA.
That is correct. It operates as a grant. And so we will incur the expenditures and then have to go in and then request reimbursement and draw down the funds. And so we're able to do that, like I said, with the pre-award costs, those expenditures that we've identified that happened before the grant that qualify. We're going to go capture those, go ahead and pull those down, and then we will pull those back into the budget next year after the adoption of the original budget. We can't consider them as part of the original budget, but we can amend them in. So. We do reflect indirect cost and some other pieces of the federal funds that we receive that are part of this budget as well. Without necessarily going through all the details here, I will mention we did not include any interest revenue on investments in the market that we're in right now. And so if we are able to achieve some decent returns on our investments, that will help our revenue projections as well. We try to be conservative where we can and adjust as the year goes on. So
Josh indicated we're going to have lots of more revenue.
and that is the plan. I'm hoping that we do. We are able to take full advantage of the market. Before I move us into the 5-year projection, are there any questions about the preliminary budget at this point? Like I said, the major pieces the board has taken action on. We've put placeholders for anticipated costs, such as we do expect the property and casualty insurance to see an increase, and we have captured that along with, we know that we have other costs that have increased as well, as like our transportation cost, and again, the staffing plan is also reflected in these numbers as well. What I will also mention is that going back to ESSER, and this helps us tie into how we look at our 5-year projection. The preliminary budget is simply represented as General Fund 199. I wanted to give that very clean and pure look at General Fund 199, although we utilize ESSER as a funding source of our operating expenditures. And so when I look at this number, you'll see that it varies a little bit from the numbers I use in the 5-year projection on the next slide. And I just wanted to point that out, that there are some differences there, because this does not have ESSER funds that I have to utilize and code expenditures into over in a separate grant fund. But whatever I can reflect in General Fund 199 out of ESSER is shown here. And it's all just a matter of the timing of those expenditures and whether or not they're eligible. And so that's we've had to make that distinction in showing this representation. So this will reflect what our M&O budget will be and presented in our notices and everything else, because those notices and everything don't take into consideration ESSER.
About $3 million, it looked like.
Yes, sir, it is. So
between the preliminary budget and the
there's about
5-year forecast.
That's about what has been moved from this budget. Our function 11, you'll see that first line instruction. We've moved about $3 million into the ESSER grant funds. Yes.
Is that a separately audited fund?
It is.
So our auditor will have to be tracking those income and outgoing expenses.
Yes, those will be separately audited, plus the federal requirements for reporting those, and as well as the state requirements for any ESSER funds. There's multiple levels, and again, we've learned more and more about those as those guidelines and requirements have come forth, and that's caused us to come back and adjust.
Of course, they're different. The TEA and federal requirements are different on how you have to account for the funds.
They do have slightly different requirements as far as their reporting.
The decrease in plant maintenance and operations, what's driving that?
So we have a couple of areas. If I recall, on maintenance and operations, we have funded some projects within that area that have pushed the current budget up. And then we also have taken into consideration, we have some vacancies that we have put in an amount in in anticipation in the plant maintenance and operations line, as well as some utility savings that we're working with. You also see a significant increase in function 71 from the prior year, and that's a restatement. That's a change in GASB requirements that all of our operating leases and capital and as well as our capital leases have all under the new GASB have moved out of the other functions and are being restated as debt payments within function 71. So they're trickled out of multiple functions above, mostly 11 for like technology, our Dell leases, and for student computers, student staff computers, as well as our RICO copier leases that are scattered throughout the budget. Those have all moved into function 71. And there are some leases in function 51 as well that have moved down. So. If there are no questions, I'll move on to the 5-year projection. So the 5-year projection, again, I noted that this includes all resources. This includes a general fund. That's what we're looking at, but we have to factor in ESSER resources into this. So again, these numbers are varying a little bit from what you've seen in the actual preliminary budget proposal for General Fund 199. This includes not only General Fund 199, but funds 281, 282, 283, and the impacts of pre-award costs from ESSER in the overall forecast. So with this, as y'all recall, our last projection, we had a 2% raise model in the 2022-23 year, and then a 1% thereafter. We moved up to a 3% raise, and so this reflects what that long-term looks like. The other consideration that we have factored in here is the understanding that the formula transition grant, which is part of the House Bill 3 new funding revenue, it provides a little buffer for the changes in House Bill 3 and going to current property values in the funding formula versus using the prior year values. That caused, if y'all recall, that caused us to lose that little adjustment from going from prior year to current year values in the funding formula. Cost us about a $13 million a year decrease in revenue and the way the formula worked. Formula transition grants are meant to help us work through that, but that right now that revenue is expected to expire in 23-24, and that's still a considerable amount of money. We actually in the current year, the way it flows through the funding biennium. In the current year, we worked our way out of it, but next year we'll be back in it and utilizing it, and it has a significant impact in our funding outlook. And so we're hoping that will be taken in consideration. It's again something that we're looking at legislatively to push for and to make sure that our needs are known, but that is something that we have to monitor. And so we provided here a look at the 5-year projection with the formula transition grant expiring in 23-24 as current law is written. We do have a legislative session before then that we would obviously let us know what will happen before we get to that 2024-2025 school year without the formula transition grant. The other things that are taken into consideration in the model are the opening of an elementary in 23-24, as well as high school opening in 24-25. It does show the use of fund balance in outward years. You can see the impact, and we do have to go into the legislative sessions, knowing that there is a need, and we hopefully, as the need is great, it's on the statewide level. We hope to see some adjustments to the revenue and funding formula that will change this. But right now, we're just reflecting current law here. We did assume a slight increase because we feel like that will happen of $200 to the basic allotment. But I think the needs that are being seen in the state are going to be significantly more than that. And we're hoping that we see some relief from that standpoint. And if you look at this model, I have two dashed lines in vertical lines there. Those represent the legislative sessions. And so, as you can see in this model, we have two legislative sessions to work with, and either one of those could provide an adjustment to the funding formula. And so, when we look out multiple years, we have to take that into consideration that it's not going to probably look the same. And when you get out past that second dash line, the odds are that we will have a difference, and there'll be enough changes to the state funding formula that this will not be something that we have a lot of confidence in those projections when we know that the legislature is going to meet twice between now and then. So the other, we did provide a second look at the 5-year projection. What would it look like if the formula transition grant continued at the same level all the way through the model? And so you can see here what that looks like. You can see the ending fund balance and the targeted number of days look considerably different in this model. Again, formula transition grants a major piece, and we're going to have to continue to monitor and push for reemphasize the need for that program in the state.
Do you think there's a possibility that they'll go back and approve it or extend it? It's what they've done in the past. Anything with the word temporary usually lasts 20 to 30 years. They'll push it out again and again. So if we should have added temporary to that, then maybe we'd have a better chance. But that's a factor. Then also the basic allotment there is a pretty conservative number of $200. We feel like it could be above that, especially with the comptroller's announcements. So we wanted to present this both ways just so you can get an idea. The first one obviously has some significant concerns at 25, 26, 26, 27. And that's why we put the lines on there for the legislative sessions that we're always counting on for support. But with all that we're hearing right now is we feel like there's going to be additional support going in, especially with the statewide inflationary factors that are affecting districts throughout the state.
We did 200 per year. So in year one, 400 in year.
It'll be 200 period.
200, that's it.
Yes, so
Yes.
from 6,200 roughly to 6,400 for both years. The other thing we have there is we know the reality for 1% for 4 years is not what would we aspire to. But again, this is a very conservative model. Any relief in the area of the FTG or in basic allotment would obviously be really front loaded in that 86% of our budget that's salary, which could increase that number to a higher number to address inflationary factors. And so we put that in there just as a representative. That is different than what you saw last year when we first started to talk about 3%. That would be 0 for next year. We were able to put a whopping 1% in there, but obviously we want to prioritize that if we receive relief.
I'd almost rather see to be determined than put one.
Me too. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
just because that's not an incentive probably for the staff to look at it and see that.
Yes, we talked about that. We thought 0 was less motivational, but because what TBD would equal, but and that's why I'm mentioning it now, just for people to see this. It's just for illustration purposes only, and not something that we would really. I know y'all are aware of this, but people that may be watching before a legislative session, there is much less confidence than what we went through last year in planning for this year's budget. The first year of any budget, you have a little bit more confidence. Second year of the biennium, much less, because as you're going into the next year. And so that's the factor every year. So we were kind of read the politics, listen to what legislators are saying, especially those that seem to guide policy in the state. And right now they're talking about additional support. And that's why I mentioned the lieutenant governors. I think it's his third component is about teacher pay. And for him to publicly state that at this point is a real positive, because he just wouldn't say that if he wasn't serious about that purpose. So we are, cautiously optimistic going into the next session. But there has to be property tax relief. There's no doubt about it. We all have experienced it, but there's plenty of money for property tax relief and addressing the needs of school districts.
And then just coming back to summarizing, we do realize that there are future budget pressures from opening of new schools in line with our growth projections, along with that loss of the formula funding with the potential formula changes, but also with the formula transition grant. That's why we do the model, is to look out and see where those things are coming that we need to plan around and strategically plan for. And just like we have, we'll be putting some money into fund balance this year, knowing that we have to pull it out next year. That's all part of a multi-year plan, and that's what this 5-year projection keeps us on target with, and make sure we're capturing all the potential inputs and outputs. And then again, just the use of ESSER funds is that's a necessary part of the budget right now, and we've built that into the plan for the next couple of years. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to capture anything last minute. Any last questions, but there's obviously, if there's between now and next meeting, you can always reach out, and be happy to share additional information along the way.
You good?
Yeah, Rob and I spoke about an hour.
All right. Megan assures me she can get hers done in the
All right.
8 minutes or so. So why don't you come on up and tell us about the annual communications report? Thank you.
Okay,
Rob.
let's get this closed out and get this in. So Mr. Welch showed you a bunch of important numbers, and I get to show you the pictures. So we're going to end on a good note here before the break. So thank you for the opportunity to come and share our annual communications report with you. I'm not going to hit every single one of these slides in the interest of time. You can see those, and I'll be happy to answer any questions on those. Obviously, I wanted to start by letting you know and reminding you, we've talked about this before, but our communications work, everything we do in the district is grounded in Aspire 2025. And we worked very intentionally in the build of Aspire 2025 to align the communication strategies so that it was all working together. And you can see that in our work towards creating the EMS ISD experience, as well as our areas of focus, as well as in the build of our team. I want to stop just a little bit here on our team. This is the communications team, and we've spent a good amount of time this past school year building this team, realigning this team, and building we're working on building our processes and our strategies. With that, we have a couple members with us. Dusty and Chris, they hate this. This is Dusty and Chris. Our other two are here in spirit, not able to be with us this evening for various reasons, personal reasons that they have tonight. But this is your communications team, and I'm so proud to be a part of this group and work alongside these folks. And we're going to hear a little bit more about their successes here in just a second. So we do all of our work towards promoting our brand, which our community has told us is EMS community. That is built on 3 brand pillars: our world-class educators, our personalized opportunities, and our family culture. Those are the things our community told us sets us apart, and those are the priorities that they have for us here in a communications and a branding and an image experience standpoint. So those are key points for us that we focus on. These are some pretty pictures that I showed you I was going to share. These are some stats on our social media. The big thing you need to know is our social media continues to grow. All of our areas of social media saw an increase, whether it was slight as we're continuing to still build our Instagram, towards large jumps on Facebook, which is where primarily most of our parents are. So getting a lot of good engagement through our social media. We also have a lot of different marketing angles. We have our newsletters and our push of information out to parents. We have our district website that we continue to work and tweak and evolve to meet those marketing needs as well as those informational resources that are needed by our community. And then we have special purpose pieces, advertisements, partnerships that we have represented there with our HR team on recruiting. We have our listening campaign. So these reflect all the different areas that we have our fingers in, if you will, for communications. Video storytelling also remains a big piece of our work. We have our on-location videos that we've shared with you in the past. We also started a Dr. Chadwell Learns series where we stick Dr. Chadwell in a classroom and he gets to sit next to kids and learn whatever it is they're learning that day. So it's a real inside look into our classrooms to give our community an idea of the type of learning and the type of depth that's happening there. Then we also have additional work there through our special projects. Tons of videos. Chris was very busy this year. 30 virtual orientation videos for HCTC. She also does all the gala videos. So she stays really, really busy between that work and her work with our website. Marketing, our EMS Proud. We've talked about our EMS Proud magazine before. Last year when I stood here, there was a question on whether or not we would ever increase our number of issues. I'm proud to tell you that we did that last year, or this past year. Just a couple of weeks ago, we launched our summer issue of EMS Proud. It is a digital only version and it's available right now on our website and through our social media, and it's got some summer safety tips and back to school information, and we're pretty excited about that. Dusty manages that. She's back there. She does a great job with our EMS Proud and keeping us on deadline, which is not easy to do, but she does a good job. We also have other areas of outreach here. Just various different, different ways that we communicate and we outreach with our community. Special events returned in person this past year, and we're excited. We saw many of you at most of these events, so we appreciate your participation in those and your support of those. One I wanted to bring up was the ceremony of remembrance that was new this year, to bring awareness to our Medellin Memorial at Boswell High School and also honor the names that are memorialized on that wall. And this is going to be an annual event. Our next one is going to be November 8th. And so we'll start getting information out about that here not too long. We'll start putting out stuff on that. And we're excited to be able to do that. It's a very unique thing in our district to be able to do. Another project we worked on is Connect for Safety. You may or may not have heard a lot about this yet. We just started rolling this out. It's been a lot of background work right now. But this is a community initiative that we are a founding partner in to advocate for safe pedestrian and vehicular traffic and roadways and connectivity to community resources, schools, grocery stores, libraries, all sorts of things. We've worked with a company that's been helping us with this, and in partnership with Alley Surface as well, to create a web microsite, a brochure, some social media. There'll be news alerts. There's a community presentation that she's just going to start rolling out here, and so you're going to hear a lot more about this. But this is something that's near and dear to our heart and something that we've been working on for years in the background, if you will. This initiative itself really just kind of took form and is meant to be a one-stop shop for our community to come and learn about the projects that will improve the infrastructure and ways they can get involved in that discussion with our city leaders and with our community leaders. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that.
Great, thank you.
Okay. More to come on the Connect for Safety issue, if you will. The next two slides these are my numbers. So you're welcome to go back and review these numbers, and I'll be happy to answer any questions on those. Some celebrations here. These are the things that we participate in, and also I would be remiss if I didn't mention the state and national awards that the team has won this year. We continue that tradition of excellence. We've got 7 years running for both of those, and we're pretty proud of that. Represents work from all of our folks in the communications team. And this is the final slide. I love this picture. This was from our recent retreat. This is your communications team. We had a great time working on the work, if you will. And we're looking forward to a new school year to continue this work as well as continue to build on it.
Dusty have the longest arms, is that?
She does. That's why she got to take, she also has the best phone to do that with. So we let her take the selfie from there. That was very fast. Any questions?
We know how many clicks, I guess, how many people open each of those, all those things you had, and that may be in those numbers that you were saying,
Yes.
go back and look at, but you know how many go to the bond page or?
Yes, we monitor those metrics and it varies depending on the page and depending on the time of year. So like right now, all of our back to school stuff and our teacher supply lists and those are the big things. Our school hours, those are the big ones. With school starts, you can always count on the menus, the school lunch menus. That's one of our top pages. Everybody wants to know what's for lunch, except on Thursdays because we all know it's chicken fried steak day. But yes, so we do monitor those metrics and we especially on social media when we're looking at metrics, we will adjust the way we're posting, the types of posting and the words that we use to match the algorithms because those algorithms change all the time. And so we're constantly looking at those metrics to see where we can get the biggest bang for our buck when it comes to engagement.
I'll do great.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to the entire communications team for all your hard work. We appreciate
Thank
it. It is currently 6:01 p.m. on Monday, July 25th, and this board will now recess for dinner and then reconvene in a closed meeting pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings. Texas Government Code Section 551.071 for the purpose of private consultation with the board's attorney. Section 551.072 for the purpose of deliberating a purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. Section 551.074 for the purpose of deliberating the appointment, employment, reassignment of duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employees unless that officer or employee has requested an open hearing. And that also includes today conducting the superintendent formal appraisal conference. And then we have section 551.075 for the purpose of deliberation regarding deployment of specification or for implementation of security personnel or devices and security audits, section 551.082 to consider the discipline of a public school child or complaint against personnel, and section 551.0821 to discuss specific personal identifying information about a student. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw Independent School District. The board is reconvening the public meeting on Monday, July 25th at 7:15 p.m. and we will now consider the subjects set forth in the posted agenda. We'll start out by welcoming you all and apologizing. We ran a little late in closed session today, so thank you for your patience, and we will get started with our opening ceremony, Creekview Middle School.
Good evening. I'm Jen Stark, the principal of Creekview Middle School, and I have a fantastic group of Colts with me tonight to do our opening ceremony. First, I have 7th grader Josie Kishnick, who is daughter of Larry and Misty Kishnick. Josie is active at CMS. She participates in theater, athletics, choir, and UIL academics. She's an honor student who attended our Camp Goddard this past spring. Josie volunteers immensely throughout the district at EMS ISD Education Foundation, Toys for Tots, YMCA, and also does all of the concessions for middle school and high school at Boswell for the PTO. We also have with us tonight 8th grade Elliot Walker, who is the son of Jason and Victoria Walker. Elliot is also active at CMS, participating in soccer, theater, choir, Creekview TV, UIL academics, and NJHS. Elliot has also been selected to serve on the Creekview student leadership team, Colt Crew, for the 22-23 school year. We have 8th grade Valen Gutierrez. She is the daughter of Valentine and Elizabeth Gutierrez. Valen is actively involved in all aspects of Creekview, being a member of the National Junior Honor Society, volleyball, regional choir, academic UIL, and 21-22 soccer manager. The next 3 students are all siblings. We have Nathaniel, Josue, Eunice, Shatea. Their proud parents are Rodriga and Anastasia Shatea. Nathaniel is an 8th grade National Junior Honor Society member who participates in football, basketball, track, cross country, soccer, and band. Nathaniel has also been selected to serve on the Creekview student leadership team, Colt Crew, for the 22-23 school year. Josue is a 7th grade Creekview honor student who plans to also participate in football, basketball, and track, and will also be a member in AVID. Eunice is a 7th grade Creekview honor student who plans to play volleyball, basketball, and track, and will also participate in AVID. All of these accomplished students are hard workers, live the Creekview way, and we are very proud to have them here tonight. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now for the Texas pledge. I honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you.
We have some special recognitions. First is the YMCA Partnership Award. Mr. Behringer.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Chadwell, school board members, leadership. In alignment with Aspire 2025, specifically strategic strategy 6.1, we have had a long-standing partnership for more than 25 years with the YMCA. And on June the 7th, myself, Dr. Parker, and Chief Ramirez went downtown Fort Worth to be awarded on behalf of EMS ISD the Partnership Award. So here tonight is Mr. Mike Brown, who is the president and CEO of the Fort Worth Metropolitan YMCA. So we're grateful for that partnership, but more grateful for the recognition of that long-standing partnership.
So I thought I had an hour, but I was told 2 minutes. I just want to say that it's been a long-standing partnership. The Y is working with our after-school kids, more than 500 or 600 kids during the year, summer camps, youth sports, youth in government, and so many different opportunities to work here in the EMS school districts. But most importantly is how this partnership has just really demonstrated how much the school district cares about its community. And we see that and feel that every day when we interact with faculty. I personally have only been here now almost 2 years as the new CEO. I have never met a superintendent or faculty leaders that have been welcoming and sit and actually talk about how we're going to face some of the challenges that we have with youth today. My son, 17, is a senior this year at Saginaw, loves his school. And I think on behalf of our staff, you guys want to stand. This is who really does the work. We wanted to present this and just tell Dr. Chadwell and the team, the Board of Trustees, how much we appreciate the relationship. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for being here tonight and for that honor. We very much appreciate it. Yes, Jim would like to make a.
I just want to say, Mike, and all the YMCA team, y'all have done such an incredible job. And for those of us that live here, we know how integral the YMCA is. For some people, the first introduction is their kids being involved in sports. For some of us, we're members of the Y and exercise there. Some of us have long histories of going to camps and all kinds of things where YMCA has made a difference. YMCA drown proofing programs saves lives. The thing that I really appreciate is that y'all come to us. How can we fit your needs? How can we help you? And every day in all of our elementary schools, we offer the YMCA after school program where students continue to get enrichment support, tutorials, and just really are able to enjoy themselves with their friends and with the staff that you have working with us. And so we just again appreciate the honor that you selected us for this purpose. It's really incredible, but definitely you've earned it. Y'all have been such a wonderful partner in this district for many, many years. So thank you. Thanks.
We have a leadership Tasby graduate that we would like to honor, our very own Dr. Tolbert. And
Well, I would say that you make extra money if you go through this program, but they don't make any money. Okay, you don't know our board members are unpaid. They do all this as a service and sacrifice for our students and to serve this community. And one of our own, Dr. Marilyn Tolbert, completed a leadership program through the Texas Association of School Boards, which designates her as a master trustee in her work. She was selected as one of 35 school leaders throughout the state to go through this program for this last year and visited schools and around the state. Did an immense amount of training, was honored just a few weeks ago with this recognition. Understand being a trustee doesn't just happen this evening. It doesn't happen at special events. It happens in preparing yourself to make really, really hard decisions. Hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of thousands of lives. And of course, all of our families are affected by the decisions they make. So we appreciate you extending that learning, being a part of this. And so we wanted to recognize you.
thank you.
Thank you.
You. I did not want this to be. Very high protection of the time.
She'll hold her. I just tell you, pass it. There. Proud of you.
We also have some special introductions tonight. Let's start with Dr. Adria.
President Ring, Dr. Chadwell, and Board of Trustees, it is a joy to make the following introductions. First, we have our new principal at Elkins, Ms. Sonia Garcia. Ms. Garcia began her career as a bilingual teacher. She has 13 years of experience as a campus administrator, and she joined us last year as an assistant principal at Marine Creek. So we're very excited to have her. She has her master's and her bachelor's degree from Texas Women's University. She grew up in, she was born in Colorado, but she really considers Texas her home, right? Okay. And she has 3 daughters that she is very proud of. And I know at least one of them is here tonight. Next, we have Miss Courtney Ryan. And Courtney is the new assistant principal at Dozier Elementary. And Courtney has been in education for 20 years. She's been in several different districts. She's taught 2nd grade through 5th grade. And most recently, she is an RTI interventionist. She is very excited to be here and to join Miss Bradley in leading the Dozier Ducks. So welcome to both of these educators.
We have one more to do.
And I forgot to mention that Courtney has many family members here. We should have them standing later.
Madam President, Dr. Chatwell, again, we are excited to introduce some new administrators in our secondary ranks. The first one that we'll recognize is Dr. Sewell Bernard. Dr. Bernard will serve as an assistant principal at Wayside Middle School. She received her undergraduate degree from Tennessee State, and then her master's degree in counseling from Texas Southern. She is a University of Houston doctoral graduate. Go Cougs. She taught 2nd and 4th grade. She's been an elementary counselor. She's been an assistant principal at both elementary and the middle school level. Her husband and 2 sons, her husband Chris is here. Oh, there he is. Yeah, literally with his hands full. And then they have 2 sons, Chase and Colin, that are also present. So we would like to welcome Dr. Sewell Bernard. And she has 2 bonus children that are here as well. Awesome. Welcome. Next, we have Mr. Geary, who will be an assistant principal at Highland Middle School. Mr. Geary received both his undergraduate and his graduate degrees from the University of Texas in Permian Basin. And he also received his superintendent certification as well. He is currently working on his doctorate degree from Southern New Hampshire University. Excuse me. Mr. Geary has taught from pre-K all the way through high school, social studies, science, CAPE classes such as medical terminology, principles of engineering technology. He's been a coach, a campus athletic coordinator. He and his wife, who's here as well, have 2 sons, both Ethan and Evan. Welcome, Mr. Geary, to EMSISD. Thank you. And then finally, we have Ms. Hillary White. Ms. White is a 19-year veteran. She will serve as an assistant principal at Boswell High School. Excuse me. She has been, over those 19 years, she has been a middle school assistant principal, a high school teacher. She's worked with Abbott, Advancement via Individual Determination, the national office, as a staff developer and also a curriculum writer. She received her bachelor's degree from University of Central Oklahoma, and then her master's degree in education from Texas Women's in Benton. She and her husband, who have been married for 20 years, Tobin, and they have 2 children, Benton and Emma, both of which are graduates from the University of North Texas. Legally. Go be great. Congratulations and welcome, Ms. White.
Madam Board President, Madam Ring, Dr. Chadwell, the extinguished board, and all of the members of the leadership team. It is always a pleasure to stand before you and thank you for your support of student services. I am here to introduce to you our new Director of Compliance and Policy, Mrs. Kathleen Eckert. Would you please come up? Mrs. Eckert began her education career in 1998 as a history teacher and a softball coach. And during the summer of 2004, she began her administrative path as an assistant principal at OD Wyatt, of which I am a graduate of that great campus. A few years later, she joined Northwest ISD and was named the associate principal, and she had the privilege to open Byron Nelson, where she worked under the astute and the magnificent leadership of Dr. Linda Parker. In 2012, Ms. Eckert was named the principal of Hillwood Middle School in Keller ISD. That's where I became acquainted with her. During her 10 years at Hillwood, both the school and Ms. Eckert received multiple awards, and I want to make sure I get all of these right. Number 1, Hillwood was named as a Texas and national school to watch 3 times. Hillwood also was the first school in Texas to be given the Whole Child Award by Texas ASCD in 2018. Ms. Eckert was invited by the National Forum to Accelerate Middle Grade Reform to visit and present in schools in China in 2017. Ms. Eckert also is an HEB Excellence in Education Award finalist, and she had that distinct pleasure in 2020. In this past January, Ms. Eckert published a book titled School Transformation Through Teacher Appreciation, and I have my own personal signed copy. I'm going to look forward to reading it. Also, Mrs. Eckert has been married to her best friend and the love of her life for 25 years. Mr. Charles Eckert, would you please stand? Mr. Eckert is the executive chief deputy of the Tarrant County Sheriff's Department, and we would like to thank you for your service. And lastly, they are the wonderful parents of 2 adorable labs, Bella and Max. They're full of love and they're full of personality. And in her downtime, Miss Eckert does spend a little time outside by the pool listening to books on audio. Thank you.
Concludes our special introductions for this evening. So we're about to head back into reports. So if you were here for those festivities, now would be a great time to get up and leave, although you're welcome to stay for the entire meeting. And we will head back to reports, which we didn't quite finish at the 5 o'clock session. We were on an operations report. Mr. Walker.
Yeah.
No, the one time you had something. It's like, yeah, I didn't want you to do it. I was like, well, I knew you would say no if we talked to you beforehand.
I guess the rest doesn't have to stay.
Yeah.
They want. They want to stay. They want to stay. They're choosing. They're choosing to stay.
Choosing.
All right, Clete, I think we're ready for you.
Okay. Good afternoon. We'll start tonight's off here with the going over the administration building. So we have some of the landscaping, trying to highlight that with the native rocks and trees, and of course trying to water when it's hydromulching. But you can see that kind of sets up everything. The parking lot's been cleaned up. It's been the fire lane has been painted. And in area C, we have furniture. Up the top right is the operations workroom and the emergency room. And then on the left is just an example of a collaborative work setting with a round small table in the middle, and there's 4 workstations located in that specific area. I believe that's in communications. And moving over to finance and communications also, that's an example up there. On the right is Megan's office, and on the left is, I think that's the finance furniture. So you can see that the finances, even though they have their individual areas, they're not as, they're more separated just because of the nature of their work. So
Is that the carpet? Is that carpet?
Yes.
Is that what we got in?
it's very typical of what we put in, ever since Dozier in our campuses.
And they're all carpet tiles as well, so we can replace pieces. If there's a damaged piece, we don't have to replace the whole room. So which will be really good, especially when we run into our office areas, it's where our chair is. You know, you'll see that we're out, but the rest of the office is fine. We'll be able to modify that, and we can also keep it in stock so we can go out and repair areas when needed.
Or when we serve food in the room. Anyway, it's moving right along. We have the TCO for it. And so maintenance is going to move the personal boxes and their workstation area starting Thursday morning, first thing, beginning at 6 a.m. and they'll stage those throughout the day. And then Monday, August 1st, this first group will be moving in. So we're looking forward to that. I may have some more pictures to do. See, top right is the upstairs and the third highest level, the upper level. And again, there's an example of the carpet, but the furniture starts coming in phases starting, I think later this week and some next week. So it'll take them a month to 5 weeks to put all that furniture together. It's a lot more furniture involved in those spaces. And the one on the left.
Are we putting it together, Clete, or that you said they were putting it together?
Yeah, I'd say it's
part of the
it's part of the contract for the furniture. And on the left, that is part of the curriculum ed services. It's their offices. And really, I mean, it's kind of like that in the building. That's on the western side, and that's the eastern side toward the parking lot. And then the bistro, so it's coming along. It's just, that's a lot of tedious. It's a kitchen. So it takes a little bit of time to put that together, but that's progressing along. And then the boardroom today was close to getting a TCO, but we did not get it. So, but that's still ahead of schedule. And area B, we did get the TCO, so the furniture start coming in there. So it'll be a phased project working, and everything so far has been hitting on that. So we're excited about that. Any questions about?
How about a punch list? Are they going to clear a punch list by areas?
My area. So that was one of the advantages. Like we were starting school, we'd already would have moved in and then we'd have had it, taken 4 or 5 months.
Right.
Whereas we waited 2 or 3 weeks on Area C so they could get in there and punch and, be out of our way. And we'll do the same thing. Once that furniture starts, they'll start working all their punch. Sure helps out, getting into it and getting a better finished product. Eagle Mountain High School. So this time I put a few time elapsed photos, if you will. So the bottom left is when they first started moving dirt, and you can see it had just rained. Whereas on the right, that is basically the same location, but that's on top of that plateau, and that is the bottom of the stadium floor. So you can if you look real close, you can see the bowl, how it goes down, that little vehicle truck, whatever that is on the right, just how to drive down the slope. And where the sand is located, the base for that is the turf room, and you can see a machine also drilling piers for the dressing room area. So that part's moving along, but after a little over 3, that's 4 months on that one.
You said it rained before that, so it must have been a long time ago.
Yes, sir. The next one's the same kind of concept, but it's not quite as, I think it's a little over 2.5 months, something like that. But this is the main building area. So the bottom left is looking to the east. And we had our little groundbreaking right up there where all that mud's located. And the one on the right, the top right, just gives you an idea of the grade beams, the piers. We poured our first slab last Monday, right in the middle of that. So we seem to be going ahead and staying on ahead of schedule. Concrete's becoming an issue. No matter how large you are, means you might get a little bit more, but the main plant, the kiln, had a catastrophic failure about 6 weeks ago, whatever that was. So they've repaired that. That's the ability to put the cement together and cook it, if you will. But now they got to do all their catch-up orders. So it'll get better, but it's going a little bit slower. But I wouldn't say it's something we've really lost time on.
Is that on site? Are they making the concrete?
No, they did the study to do an on-site batch plant versus just getting it, and the numbers were better if we imported it in. But it's every bit of that site is under construction. Something's moving, and they're large machines. Well, over 900 piers by now. We're probably 1,200 piers. So it's the geode wells. Let's see, they're at the top of that one on the right where the shells kind of turn in different colors. Turf projects at Chisholm Trail and Rough Rider. So that's really no comparison to what we had there. If you remember, it was always shiny and just worn out. And we have the new product down, and sure makes a big difference. And these two fields will be the same type of fields. It is the sand based. It's not the coconut fibers. So this is also what we'll be putting in at Eagle Mountain High School. So just doing a few punch items, and the campuses have them back. Elementary 18, so it's under progress. So it's kind of going night and day from the high school over to this one. Seems like the smallest site we've ever been on. But the one on the left is they're digging down, building the pad. So they excavate all the dirt, then they put the dirt back in with some water, and they just keep rolling it until you get the right density, and they're doing their lifts, and it's just excavation on the whole side on that one too, just not near as large. Getting water in a new development, sometimes there's always a challenge on any project. You just really don't know what it's going to be every day or every week. But this one's getting the water, so we could do the lifts. So we have figured that part out. So, the problem with this one is the steel order. So, it can rain for, it could rain for 2 weeks, but at some point it's not even a critical path because we don't get the steel till the end of November. So as long as we make that point, we're still okay. So even though it makes me nervous, it still doesn't matter because we can't get the steel till November. And they built their schedule based on that to be successful. But it will be this time next year, we'll be moving in like overnight. So. Just to talk about Wayside again, we got just some rough pricing here because we'll have to get some more pricing But we got Hellas to give us a bid of what we thought it would cost to repair that track and the tennis courts. So when you talk about Wayside, at best, it's 2022 now. We probably wouldn't be in the building even if the bond had passed 2026. So you're 4 years out. Could you wait 2 years? You might be able to on the tennis courts, but on the track, you really can't. It's got cracks in it and may not be the best track we need to put down, but it's the one that'll get us through this time period. So we've talked to Rob and he's earmarked some money for that out of the M&O budget for next year. So we'll go through our purchasing process here and we'll go through and bring those back to y'all at a later date. So, and then right now we're trying to recover the current field we have, trying to find water for it. And I think that's all I have for night on construction. If there's any other questions on
That's
that.
the last grass field, right? Wayside.
Last, we still have softball, baseball at Chisholm and Saginaw. But this is as far as a middle school, and this is it. So.
There are questions? Okay, and I think you've also got a attendance boundary update for us as well.
Okay. Dwayne and I had our meetings to talk about the high school attendance zones. We had 3 meetings, one at Ballsville, one at Chisholm Trail, and then one at Saginaw. And we presented the slideshow that we showed at the last board meeting. Just to give you a summary of the attendees at Boswell, there were 25 total attendees. 21 of those were from the home campus Boswell, 1 from Chisholm, 3 from Saginaw. And at Chisholm Trail, there were 16 total attendees, 9 from the home campus, 2 from Saginaw, and 5 from Boswell. And then at the Saginaw, there were 14 total, 7 from Saginaw, 5 from Boswell, and 2 from Chisholm Trail. So they gave us we showed the presentation, they gave us a lot of feedback. Probably the Q&A, some has around an hour, some a little longer, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. So we stayed there pretty much until all the questions or comments were taken. Some of them gave them verbal. We wrote down the questions. Some of them, we had the cards, they wrote it down, they gave it to us. We still have to answer some of those depending on some of our discussions tonight of kind of what course we go down. Megan has put some generic, there's some things on the website already, but when you start talking about rethinking some of this, those could possibly change. So we have some things that, this is not all inclusive of everything, but when you start grouping in themes of questions, these are the ones that kind of hit home the hardest. And the 2 bullet points at the top is about transfers. Madam President, I don't know how I can go through all these, or we can go 1 or 2 at a time based on theme, however y'all want to do that as far as feedback.
It's easiest for you. You want to get feedback from us as we go in the different topics, or?
Yeah, I might keep us. So the first one was like transfers. Would they be allowed? And then we talked about, it's Eagle Mountain. Would they get transfers, or are the other schools, some of the schools that are some of the students that would be going from Chisholm to Boswell or from Chisholm to Saginaw, could they be considered as transfers? So that was really going back to the second bullet, the original school. And then the athletic participation came back. If we did allow transfers, would they be able to participate in athletics? And that would be our local rule that we would change or enforce, however that may be. So I think those first 2 are kind of all grouped together.
What was the presentation telling?
I think we on the Q&A we put down no transfers at this point. So we said this was a starting point. We can always come back, get your feedback, get the board's feedback, and modify as needed. So in all our presentations, we referred them back to just like the sibling rule. That was on the Q&A, that was a no at that point. Freshmen and sophomores was a no. And then the last one's more about different attendance zone location. But again, we told them we were getting their feedback, and we heard multiple things about those topics: transfers, siblings, and juniors.
Handle the siblings there, Tim?
I'll make a couple of comments. I think the I'll talk about the transfers and then the sibling. I think for us to keep things the way that they've been going for the last several years, I think a no transfer policy is good. We had transfers, if everybody remembers, for years and years. And in the athletic realm of things, that created it ended up being kind of like a recruiting war within Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD. A lot of people didn't realize that. I was the athletic director at the time when a lot of that was taking place, and it was a problem. And we finally went to the policy where you had to, for high schools, you had to live in that high school attendance zone in order to participate in high school athletics. So I think retreating from that would set us back a little bit. Plus, it also makes it hard to plan for the opening of the schools. And a lot of people don't realize this, but that's also the first year of realignment for high school athletics. That happens every 2 years, and this is going to fall in the first year of a 2-year cycle. And you know, when you can't have your people that you're supposed to have to participate in, especially in the football realm, you know, I believe when we opened Chisholm Trail High School with 2 classes, and we opened in the first year of realignment, you have to make a decision that first year whether you're going to play football or not. Because if you do, then you play 2 years. If you say, well, we're not going to play, you can't opt in the second year and play varsity football. So I think the way we've done it is there's always going to be some people that disagree with that a little bit, but I think for the overall health of our athletic programs in our schools, I think that's a very solid way to go, and I think that will benefit us greatly in years to come if we continue to do that. The sibling rule, I think I have a very strong belief on the sibling rule that, and this would affect kids. I think we should have it. Sibling rule simply means that if I have a brother or sister in a high school, especially this will be when the first year when we open Eagle Mountain High School, whichever high school that is, I may not be in that zone, but my sibling may be a senior at the school and not live in that attendance zone, but they are still going to go to the school because the new school doesn't have seniors for them to go to. Well, if I'm an incoming freshman and I still don't live in that attendance zone, I don't think we should take transfers. But this is different because I've got an older sibling sitting there. So should a parent have to be forced to have a kid at one school because there's not a place for them to go at the new school, and then yet I've got an incoming kid and I'm going to force them to go to the other school. So now I've got split kids. And it doesn't make for a cohesive family atmosphere. And I think, you know, that kind of runs its course over time. That won't affect a lot of people. But I think for the health of the family and just the overall health of the kid, you know, now if they choose to go ahead and go to the other school, that would be their prerogative. But if they chose to stay at that campus under the sibling rule, I think they should be able to do that. So that's kind of my thoughts on the transfers and sibling.
I concur on the sibling piece wholeheartedly. I think it would be terrible to break. I mean, if you had 2 kids in band, you'd have to literally choose which kid to watch on a Friday night. That would be very unfortunate.
So when we opened Saginaw, did we give them the option of just a one time? Doesn't the UI allow you to choose one time which school you're going to go to? Did that not work out well? They get one chance at it.
The school can get, according to in the UIL rules, they could have a one-time option to choose to go to that school. But at that time, if you remember, when we opened Saginaw, we were kind of doing a free-for-all transfer deal anyway. It wasn't quite as extensive as it got a little later, but kids were still able to transfer. So it really wasn't anything out of the norm when we opened Saginaw either. But still, so when you open a new school, The UIL says as a district, we can give them a one-time option. So if you live in the Boswell attendance zone, you could choose to go to Eagle Mountain High School and still be eligible, even though you don't live in that attendance zone.
So it doesn't necessarily apply to the situations where the kid is going to, it's a sophomore, probably be a sophomore, who would be then forced to transfer basically to Eagle Mountain. He could stay at Boswell if that was an option.
If we gave them that option, yes, and they'd still be able.
And then that's it. If he makes that choice, he can't later decide to go to Eagle Mountain.
Yes, he could.
Even though he's in that attendance
He
zone,
could.
he still could.
Yeah, that's what's a little unfair about the UIL rules is because when you do transfer, you're always given the opportunity to go back to your quote home campus, wherever your family resides.
Okay.
You'd be eligible immediately when you did that. So it seems a little weird that they give you a chance to do two things, but in that situation, they could legally do that.
And if the kid wasn't affected, if we did consider this rule, could they go from Saginaw to Chisholm Trail? I mean, once you open it up, or does it have to be people affected by an attendance boundary change?
I'm not for sure on that.
Okay.
I know it would affect the new high school. I don't know if you opened it up. If
For 1 year.
For 1 year, if a kid could choose to go from Boswell to Chisholm Trail.
I'd be
I'm not really for sure. I don't know the
We
answer.
only had 2 schools at that time, so it didn't matter. Now we got 4.
Yes, I don't know.
That would not be good.
I know they're
Yeah,
eligible.
but I would think that would make sense. Argument.
You're talking about
Okay.
UIL.
Well, that would be a point of clarification we would like to understand as
Yeah.
a board then.
I think you ought to restate the
I-
question.
Is if we use the UIL rules to allow transfers, is it only eligible for kids whose zoning is affected? So it's not a free for all. It's not totally open transfer.
Does the UIL only-
Those kids who's are affected by the rezoning?
We'll check, but I'm thinking that if following the logic Mr. Doctor was just saying, which I concur with, it wouldn't be people that aren't affected because their attendance boundary hasn't changed.
That's changed.
Right.
That's
So
what-
if you're in Chisholm Trail and your attendance boundary hasn't changed, then that's still your attendance boundary. If you moved out of it, it would require transfer, which would require the participation form and all that stuff.
That's what we all said made sense.
Boswell Saginaw was different because even if you stayed in Boswell, because I mean, back then there was the baseball team getting together and saying, let's all go to I'll go to Boswell, the volleyball team, let's all go to Saginaw.
We'll
And they
check
had that
into it.
opportunity when that one-time transfer
I
happened.
think one factor we have to look at as well is what the school's district's rules are. So if a school district does allow open transfers in this case, say in this case, we established you could go any place, and that was the rule. I don't know how UIL would respond to that. So we'll have to find out how that
I think
affects.
they let you do it under the 1-year deal.
Yes, under the 1 year.
That's
If
what I
we,
think. But
because you have districts that have open enrollment at all their high schools, you choose which one you go to, and now there's not set attendance boundaries. The whole district is an attendance boundary that's common to everyone, but we'll find
Well,
out.
yeah, let's clarify it. Other thoughts on?
I think the sibling rule, I agree with y'all, Paige and Kim, everybody else, I don't know.
I agree as well.
Okay. And we sure don't want to open it with just freshmen and sophomores. We did that with Chisholm Trail, right? And that, they still haven't.
It worked at Saginaw because when we opened Saginaw, we opened it in the second year of the realignment period. So they just played an outlaw freshman JV schedule their first year with freshmen and sophomores. And then the next year, when they had 11th graders, they went to a football district. And so that would be the same as this opening Eagle Mountain. They'd actually go play varsity football for the first time with 3 grades, not 2. We opened at Chisholm with 2 grades. And as an athletic guy, I think we did that campus and those kids and those families a disservice when we did that, because they played varsity football with freshmen and sophomores. Can you imagine that in a 5 and 6A setting? And that didn't work out very well. Set them back for a while. That's, I wish we could change that, but we can't.
It just leaves the last one.
Yeah, I was gonna
Okay.
say, well, I was gonna ask about that one. So are we looking at other?
Yeah, I would say the Boswell High School, Eagle Mountain attendance zones, where it's currently was proposed, which was Bailey Boswell Road. That probably, as you can tell from the attendees from Boswell, each three of them, that was probably the topic that came up the most on that. So can we do that? Yes, we can do that. We can move it up to
Move
park.
it to park.
Mhm.
Okay.
You know, it will change everything on the west side of 287. It's not just one move, because what we basically did in the proposed, we moved all the students from south to north. Well, now you're really not doing that. You're just keeping them put. And then, you know, on the east side, you know, that you have to get something off Chisholm Trail. So really they're staying on the, as far as the west side of 287, they'd be basically staying the same. So that's you know, we can do that. You know, we gave a 10-year projection. So you've got the proposed, which basically put Boswell and Chisholm at 2,300 students in 10 years projected. And of course, Eagle Mountain would just barely getting over the 2,000 because you're putting more kids in the Eagle Mountain High School. Whereas if we do a change where we bring Park down or bring everybody back down south in 10 years, you know, two of those, Boswell and Chisholm, is going to be right over 2,500. So at that point, they can either, I mean, they're just going to be living with a larger population.
How big would Eagle Mountain be?
I think around 17.
With that move to park?
Mhm.
Because, what is it? North of Park, there's not any houses there. It's many houses there, right? Or am I
Well, they're
still?
currently, once they get rolling, it'll be 100 kids.
I'm talking about right now. I mean, there's no one there to say, wait a minute. I mean, when they buy a house there, they'll know where they're going.
I
They're
think
going
some are occupied now, are they not?
Yes, they're occupied.
Yeah.
Some of them are. I mean,
Yes, when you're closer to Old Decatur and here to Straits.
oh, yeah, down there. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, they would open, instead of 1,300, they'd open right at a little, maybe 1,000, call it 1,000. We did that southerly move.
I attended these meetings and that was definitely the big hot button, was the southern boundary of Eagle Mountain High School. I definitely think it needs to be park. If there's any way to make it work, the Twin Mills, right? Twin Mills and those, they need to go to Boswell unless it absolutely cannot work. I feel strongly about that, that Park Drive needs to be the divider for the new high school.
I agree.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
think we all are.
And I think, you know, and people say, well, that's going to make Boswell a little bigger and stay 6A or whatever. Ultimately, all of our high schools are going to be 6A. You know, and, you know, it won't be that many years down the road. And I think when that time comes, we'll just have to pass some bonds to add on to each one of our high schools to accommodate the growth, you know, because they're not big enough to have 25, 26, 2,700 kids. And so we just, instead of building a new high school, we just go in and add those on. Boswell may get an addition faster than the rest of them, you know, because of the moving the attendance boundary. But if it is, you know, and.
Well, I think all of them, I mean, they're all going to be over 2,500
Yeah.
at some point. If it's not 10 years, it's 15 to 18. It's going to happen. You know, then fortunately, you know, we got, Saginaw is a little bit different because they don't have the largest hallways, but you know, the cafeteria is going to need to be addressed. Chisholm has the big hallways, a large cafeteria. Boswell, through the renovation, has the larger hallways, but the cafeteria is not quite there. So there's a few little things in there that will happen someday. It's just going to happen sooner. But in the long run, you know, I mean, in 5 years, we'll know, you know, but
How good the decision was.
you know, when you're a fast growth district, you end up having, it's very rarely you get a one move and it gets to stay, you know, so, and hopefully this will get us out 10 years.
And with the way we're going around here, we may need to relook at some of that at some point anyway. It may not be tied perfectly to a high school opening if we have to, but.
We did look, Dwayne and I looked at that, so we can keep the secondary schools pure feeder, but there will probably be one elementary that's not that way, that we'll have to go up because the Boswell zone, if we do this, we'll have more elementary kids than the Chisholm zone. So we don't want to build another school in the Boswell zone, so we'll just go up and get some of the Boswell students through the elementary years. And then they'll go back into the Ed Wilkie feeder pattern Chisholm Trail.
So I want to underscore something that Mr. Welch just said is this would be a philosophical change of saying we have clear feeder patterns from middle to high, but not elementary to middle to high. And as we've discussed it, we see that the middle to high is a bigger deal than the elementary to middle to high in terms of planning and all the things that go along with that, fine arts, athletics, academic programs, et cetera. So it's more difficult as you get out to have clear feeder patterns at the elementary level, just because of the nature of growth in particular areas. And so we just wanted to make sure everybody's clear on that change.
Well, it sounds like you have a consensus on the park piece. I think we all kind of brought it up the first time you came to us, and it sounds like it was confirmed in the meetings. And it's certainly, I'll speak from my experience, the most community feedback I've gotten on this topic. So I think it's a hot button for a lot of folks.
And the other side of it that Mr. Welch talked about is it also identifies other neighborhoods that would have moved that now do not move, which creates, they may have not been engaged.
Well, yeah.
Potentially and realize later. But it takes that off the plate in terms of those effects and those other.
Yeah, it's, the other issue is the, between McElroy and Longhorn, you got Saginaw Elementary. Then you got the group that's just the, house. There's two different, there's Old Saginaw and Parkview Hill. Parkview Hills. I mean, they all currently go to Chisholm, but we'll have to do some work there. They're not all going to go back to Chisholm, I don't think. We'll have to really work on that, but we can minimize some of that.
But to clarify, you may just be moving some people back to where they are. You're not moving people differently.
No, we'll not move them differently.
It's just that some
right now we
people
have
may not
both
have
of
to.
those moving to Boswell. One of those will have to stay at Chisholm, I believe is what we looked at.
Well, and I hope this would help that it was just a proposal. I mean, we've listened to the input, and I think the board has agreed that we did want to move that attendance boundary out. So, I mean, you didn't tell them this was set in stone, even though they probably accused you of that at the presentation.
I think I said the word proposed several times.
Yeah,
Yes.
so,
So
okay.
it was, again, it was good input from them. And we had the same kind of discussions y'all did.
I mean, that's why we have meetings like that. I mean, that's why we send y'all out and y'all do those. And because, you know, we hear and stuff, but, you know, we listen. And when y'all come back and, you know, you told us all what everybody was saying at those meetings. And, you know, that's the stuff we need up here to be able to make important decisions. So we appreciate y'all bringing the information back to us.
So the process going forward will be, you'll have new maps for us to look at, or what will we do?
Well, I think we got a good enough feedback here on these questions, so we got to revise the FAQs and then we'll put the map together, make sure the numbers work one final time. And
that'll also be posted for folks to review if
Yes,
you have additional comments.
Yes, our plan is to post that prior to the next board meeting, because the next board meeting is a report as we have planned now with action in September. Based upon not knowing exactly where we would go tonight, we didn't want to compress that timeline if we didn't have to. And so this will give one last look for people in the community to see what's going to be brought as a report, providing the additional input at that time. We'll continue to use Let's Talk. We'll send some, make sure we communicate the information out. People are aware of what the revised map looks like, and then consideration would be brought for action in September. So that's our timeline.
Good. Any other comments for Clete? All right, thank you, Clete.
Thank you.
We're ready to move on to our educational services report. Dr. Mark.
Thank you, and it's good to see everybody again tonight. We currently have a policy, EF Local, which is our instructional materials. With the latest legislation, there were some laws that came into place. So we did receive the proposals from the Texas Association of School Boards. And it was, we had the choice of two different ones. They were the exact same information, but one was one policy, the other one was two. Through the analysis and
many conversations with wonderful departments in educational services. We felt that it would be a much easier understanding to have as much in that one policy as possible, because again, we want there to be clear understanding of that. So what we have chosen as a recommendation to you is EF Local B. You are not seeing a marked up copy because the wording and the formatting is different, but the content is really not. And what I do really truly want to say is I want to thank Cindy Tucker and our fantastic librarians and our amazing curriculum and instruction department, because this has been a wonderful opportunity to develop systems and processes. But what I'm more proud about is that everything that the new law came into play, we already had our systems in place. So, any questions?
So on option A, it had on the last page about major criteria for the final decision. Don't read the rest of it, but is that anywhere in policy B that you're proposing to approve next month? You know what I'm talking about, or am I very clear there?
If you
Last section, I'll read it. The major criterion for the final decision on challenging resources is the appropriateness of the resources for its intended educational use. No challenged instructional resource shall be removed solely because of the ideas expressed therein. So that was in, is there something similar to that in B?
Yes. And I can find it because that was.
There is a way to challenge the resources in the library, I guess.
Yes, and that actually, that particular verbiage did not change in law.
That particular verbiage is in policy B?
Can I clarify? So make sure I understood what we were reading here. You provided us our current policy, which is labeled A, and your recommendation, which is B. You didn't give us both versions of what you're.
No, this,
Okay.
yeah, EF local is our current policy.
So we're changing that. EF local A is our current policy.
Yes.
The way it's listed here. Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
And then what Tasby recommended,
B.
well, they gave us an additional A and really a C policy and a local B. And the only difference between those two is, again, exact substance. But one was two different policies. B had it all in one.
Okay, got it.
And
Thank you.
Mr. Newcomb, on page 83, it's that exact quote is at the top of that page.
Thank you, Dr. Roper.
Under guiding, it's all the guiding process.
Yeah, I was looking for it at
It's
the
right-
end.
it's
It's
right
in the
there.
middle of it. Okay.
So again, what you will find is there's not very substantive changes, but again, the formatting of it is completely different. So honestly, when Andrea and White were doing the markup copy, y'all would not have been able to.
If they move certain sections.
Yes, ma'am.
To the other.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was trying to track it.
It's the same.
It's
very hard.
I will tell you, we tried many, many times, and I finally came to Dr. Chadwell and said, it's easier just to do the current and the proposed. Mhm.
Any other comments? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. That's correct. I think that concludes our reports.
Yes.
So we are ready to move into action items. Our first action item being to elect a designated delegate and alternate for the 2022 Tasby Delegate Assembly.
Move we approve Marilyn Tolbert as the delegate and Liz Catley as the alternate.
Second.
And that we have Marilyn as our primary and Liz as our alternate from Donna, and that is seconded by Steve, right? Okay. Is there any discussion on that? None. All those in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Motion carries. Okay, and next we need to conduct a federal program public meeting. Dr. Mary Jones.
I think I need to start us off here. So at this time, on behalf of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD, I declare an open hearing on the status of federal programs currently serving the needs of students in the district in accordance with state and federal laws regarding rules for school districts on reporting requirements. So,
Good evening, Board President, board members, and Dr. Chadwell. And during our federal programs public hearing, I'm going to review information concerning our current entitlements for all of our federal programs. And we begin with our mission statement, as always, talking about a culture of excellence that instills a passion for a lifetime of continuous achievement in every student. And with our supplemental funds for federal programs, we model that also in all of our programs. You all at your place had a change sheet for this. There was a slight error in one of the amounts. In Title I for this year, and once again, these are all supplemental funds for all of our federal programs, in addition to whatever state and local funds we receive. And in Title I this year, we will have an additional $349,595. In Title II, we'll have an additional $93,892. In Title III, an additional $13,875. Title IV, we have a reduction of $23,054. Perkins, we have an additional $18,209. IDEA, we have a $27,543 increase. And in IDEA for the preschool, we have a $45 decrease there. These are our Title I campuses that we serve, all 12 of them. These are the same campuses that we served last year, and we will continue to serve them. In Title I, Part A, once again, all of these funds are supplemental. The majority of our funds are used for staffing. For literacy, every Title I school has a literacy instructional coach. In math, this year, we've added 4 instructional math coaches with the additional funding we're getting. And every school will either have a full-time math coach that's Title I or a 50% they will share with another campus. Title II, Part A, once again, we are using our title funds for instructional specialists and district-wide coaches. And we have 2 in the area of literacy, 1 in the area of math in our pre-K through 5th grade program. And this year we have added a middle school math instructional coach, and we're excited to see where that takes us. Title III, once again, no changes there. We have an instructional coordinator that works with all of our ESL programs and does staff development there. Our bilingual coordinator is funded 50% with Title III. And then we have 2 parent liaisons. One that is a Spanish speaking that works with our Spanish parents, and the other one that is French speaking and works with those parents as well as any other ESL parents within our district. Title IV, these supplemental funds are to help make well-rounded educational opportunities for our students, as well as maintaining safe and healthy students to improve the use of technology to advance student academic achievement. Our funds are used to fund our language academy we have for our students and parents, our summer STEM camps that went on and that they were very successful this year. And to provide counselors, which we did for our summer school programs to help provide social and emotional support. The Perkins purpose of this program, once again, it's supplemental, and it's to develop more fully the academic, career, and technical skills of secondary education students. And then our IDEA funds are used to increase the level of services provided for students with disabilities as a supplement to the local and state funds, and these funds are predominantly used for professional staff. Any questions? Comments?
Okay, then I think actually we have to open it up for public comment. So at this time, the hearing is open to public comment. So please step to the podium if you wish to be heard. None? Okay. So at this time, the public hearing on federal programs status to the district is closed.
And we will move on. Yeah.
I just want to thank Dr. Jones for her work. This is very involved. What she makes look very simple is not. And just thank you for your management of this. And I just really appreciate your work. Also, just underscoring the fact that we have a lot of staff that we're able to bring to work with kids, and using those funds very efficiently to bring additional support for our kids is such a great benefit to those campuses and those individual children. So thank you.
We have another public meeting. Mr. Welch, if you'd like to come forward. We've got, at this time, on behalf of the Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD, I declare an open meeting to discuss the district's ESSER SUP use of fund plan and return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plan. Mr. Welch.
Thank you, Madam President, Superintendent Chadwell, and trustees. We do have, as you mentioned, the ESSER presentation tonight for our public meeting. This is very similar to what you saw back in January as a requirement. This is a step that we will be doing every 6 months as part of the ESSER funding program. Just a recap that the ESSER is part of a couple of different acts. The ARP Act of 2021 provided our ESSER 3 funding. The CRRSA Act of 2021 provided our ESSER 2 funding. And then we also have ESSER SUP, which is supplemental funding, referred to both SUP or supplemental. We do have allowable uses of those funds that are very consistent across all of the various programs there. And but ultimately, two major categories: addressing student learning loss due to COVID-19 and the safe reopening of the district, as well as other key areas in retaining employees, operational needs, and your teacher support. ESSER 3, our district entitlement was a little over $13.2 million. This is supplemental funding. It does have a required set aside of at least 20% for learning loss mitigation. And we do have the grant period through 2023 with the rollover. With ESSER 2, as we talked about earlier, that it partially supplants some state funding of about just under $4.3 million, leaving us a little over $2 million of that money as supplemental. And that funding has to be utilized. The ESSER 2 funding has to be utilized by the end of next year. Then we have the ESSER 3 supplemental funding, which is, as I mentioned, has increased to $4.7 million at last calculation. And this funding has a required set aside of at least 62.5% to be targeted for learning loss mitigation. And it runs through 2023 as well. We talked about proposed use of funds, addressing learning loss, ensuring appropriate sanitation and PPE equipment, purchase of technology for remote instruction, fulfilling operational needs, and then the training and retention of staff during these times. We have the proposed use of funds plan is documented on our website. You can get to that from the main web page. There's a title bar linking you to the COVID-19 information and ESSER grant funding information off the main web page. The second part of the program or the presentation for the public meetings is first part being the use of funds plan, second part being the return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plan, which is the RIPICS plan. Now this ties back to returning to instruction. Our plan was effective for 2019, 2020, and 2021, 2022. At this point, we are fully back and have returned to instruction. So the plan remains out there as it did during those years. There's been no changes to that since we have established a return to instruction for the district. And main parts of the RIPICS plan is that it maintains the health and safety of students, educators, other district staff. as well as the continuity of services like our technology and our academic needs, our social, emotional, mental health needs as well. So in summary, just recapping that we do have our 3 forms of ESSER funding out there. It's integrated into our budget plan as we saw in the 5-year forecast. And then just want to, as part of the public meeting, remind our community that if they have any input outside of tonight's public meeting, they can provide that through the Let's Talk application available on our webpage. And with that, that concludes the presentation for the public meeting.
Question?
Well, the last statement on there, I think, is pretty crucial to budget planning about special care is required to make sure that when those ESSER funds run out, we haven't hired staff or made arrangements that we are continuing to have to fund out of our M&O budget. So is that is on there so that we make sure that doesn't happen?
That is definitely a consideration when we have utilized the funds, is that we take that into consideration. If there are any staffing related to that, there is a plan for that to be a temporary staffing situation, and that we have an exit plan for that program. And so we have taken that into consideration.
Okay, then we at this time will proceed to the public comment portion of this open meeting. Are there any requests from the audience to speak on this agenda item? So seeing none, I declare the public meeting to discuss the district's ESSER use of funds plan and return to in-person instruction and continuity of service plan closed. And we will now move to our next agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you.
So up next, you might stay right there because we're going to have you talk to us about a bond sale.
So as Mr. Josh McLaughlin mentioned earlier, in the report section of tonight's meeting, we do have an action item to request approval to approve an order that would allow us to issue a parameter sale bond or parameter sale for the Series 2022 Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD Unlimited Tax School Building Bonds. That parameter order, as Mr. McLaughlin mentioned, would be maximum principal amount to be issued of $198,930,000, which is the remaining authorization. All in true interest cost must not exceed 5%, and final maturity of these bonds shall not exceed August 15th, 2052, as well as the sale must be completed prior to January 21st, 2023, which is 180 days out. As he mentioned, our goal is to move much faster than that and complete the sale and proceeds delivery by August the 31st. So with that, that is the recommendation on behalf of the administration and our financial advisor.
Motion by anyone?
I will make the motion to approve that, but I'm looking on the recommendation and it doesn't say anything about option 2 or the 198 million or anything.
So I think he only presented right now option 2. So that was a change. So if you
Both
said
things
as Rob presented, it would be saying
okay.
option 2.
I make a motion to accept as stated by Mr. Welch.
I have a motion by Tim and a second by Liz. Is there any discussion?
You might have to read it exactly as it's written since it's selling bonds. Sorry.
So you might have to read the paragraph.
Can it be made just like that?
Without saying the 190 million.
I think he's concerned that you didn't actually use the language.
Right.
Is there a requirement for that, Mr. Welch?
It would be appropriate to utilize the recommendation language to capture all terms.
So if you just read what
necessary
was here
for-
and said, as Rob presented at the end, that your motion is actually.
All right, I'll do that. The administration recommends that the Board of Trustees approve all matters incident related to the issuance of sale of Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD School District Unlimited Tax School Building Bond Series 2022, including the adoption of an order authorizing the issuance of such bonds, establishing parameters therefore, and delegating certain matters to authorized district officials as Mr. Welch presented.
Thank you, Mr. Doctor.
Second still stands, Liz? Okay, so I have a motion by Tim and a second by Liz. Is there any discussion then? Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Motion carries 7-0. And thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Action item is to set a public meeting to discuss the 2022-2023 budget and proposed tax rate. Mr. Welch, you sat down a little too soon.
I move we set the date for the public hearing to discuss the budget and proposed tax rate for Monday, August 22nd, 2022 at 7 p.m. and authorize the administration to publish the notice with the proposed tax rate as required by law regarding this meeting.
Second.
I have a motion by Steve and a second by Marilyn. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Motion carries.
Thank you.
And next brings us to action item F, consider endorsing a candidate for Tasby Board of Directors, position 11A. Dr. Chadwell.
Yes, board members, you have an opportunity, if you so choose this evening, to endorse one of the proposed candidates. Those are listed in your packet with their biographical information and opportunity to endorse one. And so I'll entertain a motion to endorse one or no candidate for this role. And this is for position 11A as the Tasby Board of Directors.
I would like to make the motion to endorse candidate Julie Cole from Pershing Bedford ISD for the Tasby Board of Directors, position 11A.
Second.
Motion by Marilyn and a second by Donna. Is there any discussion? Or did any further clarification?
Want to speak towards this?
Sure, yes, I can speak for Julie. She's a seasoned board trustee at HEB, very well respected in her community and works for an investment corporation. So very well versed in finance and all those kind of matters. Highly recommended from her board. Leadership Tasby people that were there from HEB really talked a lot about her. So I think she would represent Tasby well.
Any other discussion? Okay, so all those in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Motion carries 7-0. Next, we are going to action item G to consider approving child care providers. Dr. DeMille.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, leadership team. Tonight, I'm presenting a request for an additional 3 child care providers. So when you think about EMSISD child care, it's such a great incentive for our employees. I can speak to that as a parent. My own son spent 2 years at the child care center. Mr. Hoyas did a lot of research and work to get some additional grant funding, and she spent the time working with Rob and Doug in the budget office to see if she could allocate that funding specifically to add additional classrooms. Then Dr. Arnold went out and they scoured the building to find space because this year we had multiple babies on the waiting list. And getting those spots for your children is just a very big deal. So it took a lot of people to come together to find out that we did indeed have space and we could use our funding to add 3 additional child care providers so that we can really shorten that waiting list. We can get it down to 12 kids for the upcoming year, but 6 of those kids aren't due to be born until the next year. But it's such a great reward for our parents. They go ahead and get on the list. I was once on the list. I was very grateful to get that spot for my son. So this request is really for additional staffing for the child care center that we couldn't bring earlier because we weren't sure we could use the funding for that reason. And we weren't sure we had the space, but now we are certain of both. So we are requesting 3 additional child care providers.
Make a motion to approve the child care provider staffing proposal as presented.
Motion by Tim and a second by Marilyn. Any discussion?
We're taking them out of the Halfley then into another facility, a physical facility, or we just finding more room in Halfley?
They found another space in the Halfley, so they aren't being removed from the building.
Okay.
It's using space that we already had.
All right, thank you.
There. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries 7-0. Moving on, action item H, designate method of procurement for roof and HVAC replacement at multiple campuses. Mr. Kidd.
Good evening, Dr. Chadwell, President Ring, members of the board. We are recommending tonight a procurement method for the roof and HVAC replacements at Eagle Mountain Elementary, Saginaw Elementary, Highland Middle School, Boswell High School, and Saginaw High School. Texas Government Code 2269 requires Board of Trustees to determine a construction method that delivers the best value to the district prior to advertising the work. The recommendation is to utilize construction manager at risk. The district has used this method for several projects: Boswell High School, safety and security upgrades, warehouse expansion, and most recently Elementary 18. The construction manager at risk is able to participate in construction documents and specifications, can coordinate complex trades such as our roofing and HVAC, provides better scheduling for the project, best ability and provides a better ability to order and procure long lead time materials and equipment. The contractor provides oversight at multiple campuses, and the construction manager also can competitively bid all of these projects to the appropriate subs. We believe that the CMAR, or construction manager at risk, provides the best value to the district, and the recommendation is to designate construction manager at risk for roof and HVAC replacement at Eagle Mountain Elementary, Saginaw Elementary, Highland Middle School, Boswell High School, and Saginaw High School. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
We designate construction manager at risk as the method that provides the best value for the district for roof and HVAC replacement at multiple campuses.
Second. Motion by Donna and a second by Marilyn. Is there any discussion?
Is that going to be one contract, or would you possibly break it out?
No, that would be one package.
One person, one package.
That's the best value because of the value of it to get more interest and be more competitive.
Okay, thank you.
Favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have consider approving the City of Fort Worth permanent drainage facility easement. Mr. Welch.
We have several of these items tonight. Over this, we have Mike Wilson with TMP. If y'all have any questions over these easements as we go through, he's back in the back. Come on up here, Mike. He's the gentleman that navigates through the City of Fort Worth with us. He has an office down there, I think, full time to his duties. What we have tonight is the first easement is the Lennar North Point site. We bought the land from Lennar, and that was going to be our other, that was going to be Elementary 18, but we switched. And so Lennar needs an easement, but ultimately the easements go to the City of Fort Worth. So in these type of negotiations, we're probably down the road going to come ask Lennar for easements when we have to put our utilities in. So it's more of a, we just handle it, you know, and we don't typically do a money exchange on that deal.
Are we going to ask for the easement at the same time then, or are you just hoping that we'll grant this and then they'll grant us one?
Well, this one right now is like, this is not a swap at this point on this one. Right. They need this to keep their project moving.
But you said in the future, we might be asking them for.
That's correct.
An easement back.
At a different location on the site.
Same entity though?
Mm-hmm. As long as they own it. I mean, they seem to be developing the whole thing.
I think he's asking is the reason why we wouldn't pair them together, just to make sure
Yeah,
we got
make sure we
the
got
same
it
consideration.
while they own it.
If you didn't want to do it, we could come back and ask for a price. Obviously, if they, I mean. Yeah, go ahead.
So this particular instance, good evening, Mike Willis from TMP. In this particular instance, the easement that they are requesting will actually benefit the school district because they are stubbing a storm drain pipe that when that site does develop, we will connect onto that. So in this situation, it's going to benefit the school district.
So we won't have to put that in.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Also, just curious on that, would it be possible if we were talking about making some kind of arrangement, say if that was appropriate here, would we actually know if the other side had not been developed yet, could we actually write up an easement that would be adequate if the property had not been designed and laid out by y'all in terms of exactly where that easement would be? Do you follow?
So if I understand correctly, since we're not there, they're having to stub a pipe and put a drop inlet there to collect some of the school sites drainage that's going towards their street. If we were there at the same time, they would have stubbed a pipe to the right of way and we would have connected onto it and they wouldn't need an easement at that time. But because they're first, they need the easement.
They're going to develop this property. Is it still in the long range plan for a school?
I make a motion to approve the City of Fort Worth's permanent drainage facility easement.
Second. Yeah.
I think I heard Liz
Yeah,
first.
I wasn't
so
sure I
we
heard
have a
her, yeah.
motion by Tim and a second by Liz. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? And there are none. Motion carried. We're moving on down the line. On J, we need to consider approving the City of Fort Worth temporary construction easements and the City of Fort Worth permanent water facility easements.
Okay, this involves, this is really the pipeline for the city of Fort Worth to go from basically North Point development and go along 287. And that is eventually will be our domestic water for Eagle Mountain High School. So this is their initial offer, as it is, went to 16 other landowners. This is in front of our warehouse. We have a little double flag lot. So they're going to cross there. If you notice the language in there. So that's the reason there is an offer.
Whopping offer of
Yes.
$5,425.
That's it. So this benefits the school district.
Make a motion to approve the temporary construction easements and permanent water facility easements with the City of Fort Worth for the total amount of $5,425.
Motion by Tim and a second by Liz. Is there any discussion?
Even worth the 5,000? I mean, are we getting anything out of any different price? All right, no discussion.
The other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Motion carries 7. Moving on to K, consider approving the right-of-way easement with the City of Fort Worth.
This one's kind of similar, I guess, to the first one we talked about. This is a different developer. And so we own 10 acres out there by the high school site. It's up on the hill. It's a fairly small site for us. That's one we've even talked about because it's on a slope that we bought another piece of property because we didn't think this one was buildable. It wasn't good a site and we had the opportunity to get a better site. So this would be one that we were going to consider at some point not utilizing. However, the developer had to go into the city, and when they noticed it is zoned a certain way, which is community facilities, instead of a 50-foot road, they're going to make the developer put in a 60-foot road. So to do that, they've got to come onto our property 10 feet, or if we were building a school coming in first, we would put in the 60-foot road. So the developer basically will grant this to the city once they're done. So this is the city requesting that. This is also the developer that we're working on our Eagle Mountain site on the off-site road. There are 4 easements that we're working with that developer that we need for to do the off-site and meet that on time. So
Again, we can't trade those. We're gonna need 4 from them.
We're getting 4 and they're getting 1.
This is trading them?
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as we do this, get them all.
Make a motion to approve the right-of-way easement with the city of Fort Worth.
They wouldn't want to buy that 10 acres, would they?
Yeah, I believe they do.
Better.
Motion from Tim, a second from Liz. Is there any more discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Motion carries 7-0. I think that concludes our action items. So moving on, were there any questions on the routine monthly reports that any of y'all had? Then we will move on to review the 2022 board training plan.
Yes, it's on page 295 of your packet. The next meeting is, of course, a very important meeting when it comes to the budget. We have the budget update, budget amendment 21-22, review of lease agreement, Tarrant Regional Water District. We also have property casualty insurance policies that will be reviewed, continued operations reports, including a quarterly demographic and housing analysis report. Under education services, we have the 21-22 STAR and EOC exam data, new course requests for 23-24. Science and fine arts updates are both scheduled, as well as the school safety report. Under action items, again, going on with the budget, conduct a public hearing to discuss budget and proposed tax rate, consider adoption of the 22-23 accelerated instruction budget, consider adoption of the 22-23 budget, adopt ordinance to set the tax rate, and act on the 21-22 budget amendment. We also are going to ask in the same meeting for the renewal of the lease agreement with the Tarrant Regional Water District, and that's if we have the agreement in place, which we have not received that. Sometimes there's a delay on that. Hopefully we'll have it.
Is that where the ag facility is? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That's what for that facility. By the way, I know y'all have asked about a 100-year lease on that. So far, we've got 3-year. They've not been open to entertainment of a longer lease than that. But anything you want to say on that?
No, nothing at this point.
You see routine reports there stated, and under consent agenda, we have the approval for 4-H, which is scheduled every year. Resolution establishing fund balance policies is required by GASB 54, and assignment of T-test trainers, as well as the approval of the 22-23 SHAC committee.
Moving on to the consent agenda.
Move we approve the consent agenda.
Second. I have a motion by Steve and a second by Marilyn. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? There are none. Motion carries 7-0. That's to board president's announcements. Just a couple things for you all. I think most of us have finished the SBOE training. If you have not, a couple of us had some trouble logging on, so I sent you a contact there if you have any issues with logging on, but that's still an action item for us. And then be watching your emails. We're going to try to reschedule the team of 8 because there was a conflict, and we're going to try to turn that really quickly. So if you guys can be watching for that to give them feedback on a time we can reschedule. That's all I have.
Very good. Under our calendar upcoming, we have the appreciation lunch for maintenance custodial staff. That's at Chisholm Trail High School at 11:30. If you can make that, that's going to be a really a nice event for them. Take a few moments out of their workday to have a great lunch. We also move, part of us move on Thursday, communications, operations, business office, and superintendent's office all move on Thursday. So it'll be a very, very busy day. Kind of odd to think that this is be the last board meeting that I'll be in here and my office is in there. And then.
Are you asking if any of us have a pickup truck or anything to help you?
You got a pickup truck. I'm sure we have, just to make sure we no injuries. Actually, workman's comp doesn't cover y'all. So yeah, come on out. I just kidding. No, we have a whole team. I want to thank Dwayne Jones and Cleet Welch and all the people that have been a part of that. It's a lot of moving parts to have everything going on. Just watching all the various schools, with all the different projects that are happening virtually at every school. There's just a lot going on at this time. So there's never a good time to move, but it's going to be on Thursday. So we also have a schedule for the remainder of the central office to come together. And so it's pretty exciting. We're all moving in together very soon. So it's something we're looking forward to. We also have new hire orientation next week. And what would be the best day if they wanted to visit first day? Mondays.
First day Monday. We start at 9 o'clock
A
at
Monday
Chisholm Trail High
morning,
School.
week from today, 9 o'clock. We
We have a
can,
lunch as well that's being provided by
Where's his trail in the gym or the?
Performing Arts
Performing Arts.
Center.
we can introduce you at the beginning. I'll be,
We'd love to do
I'll be doing a brief, well, not that brief, but a presentation for our new hires, but we can certainly, if y'all just come for a few minutes, we can introduce you. So I know it'd be great for them to get to know who you are. And then we also have convocation on August the 8th. And just a reminder, we have elementary at 10 and the secondary at 2 o'clock. The first day of school is the 15th. Not long, okay, and then it just goes from there. Also want to remind you that we have the EMS Retired School Employees Breakfast on September 14th. You're always invited to be a part of that. That's it. Thank you.
Madam President, seeing there's no further business to come before this board, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Steve, second by Marilyn. Any opposition? Then we are adjourned at 8:51.